Hello everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's video lesson, this is basically part 2 of the sky painting class, the live class that we did. And this is how do you say off live class? Not a recorded lesson. And we're going to be working with a photograph. This was posted by Annie, and love this photo. And this is showing it on your mobile device is a really great way to save some money on printing. And especially if you're going to look at your reference photographs all in the same place, that way they're consistent. It also gives you an opportunity to edit the photo. I'm not going to be doing the project from this lesson from this here. I've got it loaded on my monitor way over here because of that. That's why I'm not going to show it. But I do want to show you an app that is free that will help you with your photographs. So I'm working on an Android, and when I'm loading it up in the gallery, I can edit. And there's two apps that you can use. You can use Aviary, Aviary. Okay, so you can use that one. Or you can use Snapseed, which is free. Aviary is free as well. And it just loads it up, and you just hit the pencil icon, tune the image, and when working with darker photos, what you may want to do is brighten it up a little bit. So I can hit the adjust button. It goes contrast, brightness, saturation, ambiance, highlights, all that stuff. If we just go over to brightness, and then I can just take my finger and I can adjust the brightness of the photo. So I'm thinking if I really want to punch up those lights, I can go to about a 36, which gives me a nice color there, or I can, make it even darker. I can click the X to stop it. Go back to tune image, go back to adjust. I can then go to saturation, and the saturation basically deepens the colors. So if you're going into the negatives, it desaturates, so it takes the color out. You go into the positives, it adds color in, and that's a really great way to really punch up those colors. Click the X to cancel out of that. So this is a really great thing to use. I use this for a lot of my Instagram photos. Just to quickly show you, I use the Drama filter, and I use Bright 2 because I like my photos to be very high key. So Snapseed or Aviary, whether or not it's available for iPhones, you'd have to check on however you do your iPhone thing. I am so not a Mac person, an Apple person. I'm a big Android person. So go to the Google Play Store, Aviary, or Snapseed. Snapseed's a really, really good one. And then from here, you can click Done to save, or just click the back button to get out of that. All right. So I've already got my photo loaded on the monitor, and although there's really not a prerequisite for this particular lesson, it is suggested that you at least have some basic concepts of color theory. I'm not going over color theory in this lesson. In the studio, there's plenty of lessons, and you'll make sure that you want to really understand your color palette. So you want to make sure you understand your cool palette, your warm palette to create your limited palette. I'm a big advocate of using less paint, better quality paint, but less paint. You don't have to have 300 tubes of paint. So I've got my colors out here, and if you're looking, you may go, oh, she's got Phthalo blue and Ultramarine blue and Alizarin crimson and Napthol red and Diarylide yellow and Hansa yellow light. But Giselle, you've always told us you rarely use all the colors in one painting. Yeah, but, artist discretion, I can break the rules because I made my own rules up. So, in my limited palette, permanent Alizarin crimson, Napthol red light, Diarylide yellow, Hansa yellow light, Phthalo blue, Ultramarine blue. Then I've got the neutrals in here, yellow oxide, burnt sienna, and then carbon black and titanium white. That's my limited palette. The extended palette has all these colors plus phthalo green, viridian, chrome oxide green, and cerulean blue. That I've got raw umber and burnt umber in here as well. We don't have to worry about that. But you may not want to do as much color mixing in your lesson, so it's nice having an extended palette. The reason why I just need white and then the 2 reds, 2 yellows, and 2 blues. In the photograph, I do see an area on the very left of the photo. The blue is a blue that leans a bit more towards the green. It does on my monitor. what you see on your monitor, all mobile devices and all computer monitors, laptop monitors are all calibrated differently. So what you see may not be what I see. So doing the exercises yourself is the only way to really learn. So on my screen, it looks a little bit more in the green. So that's where the phthalo blue would come in. But when I create my purples, I'm going to use the ultramarine blue and the Napthol red light. I don't think I'm going to need the alizarin crimson, but if my purple that I mixed isn't say if it's too dull, then I may use this instead. I don't think I'm going to need it. And then for the yellows, way in the back of the photograph, you'll see the bright yellow. And I can probably load it up on the tablet. Come on. And let's load up the one that I already edited. So right here, you'll see this yellow. Well, it's bright, it's white, bright yellow, then it kind of goes into a little bit of a tiny little bit of an orange. I'm looking here, and Hansa yellow light is a yellow that leans towards the green. And this is Diarylide yellow, or if you're using Indian yellow, is a yellow that leans towards orange. Neither one of them are really correct. What I need is right in the middle. What I need is Hansa yellow or Hansa yellow medium. I have it, but let's pretend I don't. So we're going to use these to make that little bit of an adjustment. With these colors here, with the addition of white, black, which I rarely use, you can make up any colors you want. It just takes more color mixing. So this is that bluey green that I was talking about right in here. And I'm sorry for the glare. So look at the photo that you've got. And then we've got some mauves and some red. So I'm really going to punch up these colors quite a bit. So I just taking an old page out of my journal. So this is the lessons that I did for the sky painting using blues. And so I just painted over the other lesson that I did about the dry on dry painting, which I can't stand. So I'm just going to work on this. Put out a lot of titanium white here. You can use gesso if you want to prime the page. I just used the DecoArt Media white gesso with a number 8 Bristle Bright to give it a nice tooth, but it is quite rough. And I've got some brushes out. I've got a small flat and a small filbert, and I've got a large flat and a large filbert. And I'm going to blot those. I'm going to dampen my large filbert. You can use whatever you want. Okay, this isn't a lesson about what brush to use, but more about making your colors. Oh, and just to let you know, painting a sunset with, because if you look at the photo, you got all the primary colors in there. Painting a sunset like this is very difficult because what happens when you mix yellow, red, and blue together? You get brown. So acrylics are great because you can layer everything. What we need to do is we want to make the background wet. So I'm going to take some titanium white. You can use gesso if you want. And I like working the wet on wet. Now, if you're an oil painter, you can do the initial stage with acrylics, and then you can do your oil overlays on top. Depends on the style. Okay. And this isn't a lesson I'm painting a landscape, it's just painting the sky. So I'm going to pretend that this is just the entire sky. I'm not working any trees. So with the brush that's still wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Diarylide yellow and a little bit of Hansa yellow light. And I'm just going to pop that in there. I'll bring that up a bit. So with the brush still loaded, I'm going to go to a little bit of Napthol red light and come in here. This is why it's important that you have some type of understanding in the color theory, color mixing. I'm going to take my brush, I'm just going to rinse it out. And basically you're working quickly because you don't want the paint to dry out in your brush. And I'm going to take the leftover, I just rinsed it out, and I'm just going to blend that up a little bit. Okay, and this is drying a bit, so I'm just going to take a bit more white. I could add extender to this if I wanted to. Not going to worry about it too much. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Napthol red light, and I'm going to go right in here. Okay, just going to go right in there. And I have no idea what's at the bottom here, so I'm just going to pop that in there. Rinse my brush. It's not super clean. And I'm just going to use those wide X strokes. Now I want to show you something neat. If you were to create this here and you've got a little bit too much paint on there, just take a cloth and just kind of blot it, but don't fret over it because it can always let it dry and then just repaint it again. So now I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue right into that Napthol red light. And we get a dull color, and then we're going to come in here and I'm going to use those X strokes. I'm tilting it because I've got a glare. Take a little bit more blue. And it's starting to dry a little bit. Pick up a speck of red. Come in here. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to go into a little bit of phthalo blue with quite a bit of white. And I'm going to come in here. And this is a little bit too blue. I'm going to pick up more white. Come right in there, right over top of everything here. Nice wide X strokes. And I'm using the biggest brush that I can stand to do this. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get caught using a tiny brush, because you'll be doing this forever. I'm going to pick up a little bit more phthalo blue. That glare is driving me crazy. Okay, nice wide X strokes. Now, the wider the X strokes, the more of a gradation you're going to get with your painting. And then at the same respect, you don't want it to be so smooth. You want it to be blended out a bit. I'm going to take that brush, come right in here, and I'm just going to go back in. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit more red, right in the dirty brush. Come in here, get those X strokes. It's starting to dry. Now you can mist it with a little bit of water if you want. A little bit more ultramarine blue. Nice X strokes, a little bit in here. And I know there's some dark here, so those wide X strokes. So you see how I'm overlaying everything? So it's important to know exactly what the colors are going to do for you when you're working on this. And it's going to come up here, a little bit of purple up here. You know, some working those X strokes, and then this is now still, this here, I'm making a mess on the back side. This is too bright. So right in here, there's a bit of there's some purple in here. This is all drying now, so I'm going to try to do a little bit of blending. And I have no idea what's going on in the bottom, so we're just extending the sky. Now remember what happens when purple and yellow meet? They neutralize each other, and this is all dry now, so it's kind of sticky. Best thing to do, first of all, is to wipe all that. Best thing to do, rinse your brush. I'm going to go to a different brush actually. I'm going to go back to white, a little bit of the yellow. I can come back right over this, and as well I can take the white, my monitor just went off. A little bit of the white, which will brighten this up a little bit. So you can think that this is the sun right in here. Okay, and then with that white, I can come in, or with the white. I'm trying to do this while it's so before it dries. I can take some white in my brush and just scumble some clouds and just keep it nice and soft. And I'm going to come in here. We're not copying the sky to perfection. You're going to, as long as you've got the colors set in there, you're going to be okay. And then now this is starting to dry, so what do? Well, we can deepen it up even more by just repeating the steps again if we wanted to. So I'm going to take some Napthol red light, and let's take a little bit of the Diarylide yellow, a little bit of the white. And now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to match the color that's already there. And then I can come in. Just going to deepen up some of the areas, blot the brush. And just punch up some of those colors. This is still a little bit of wet here, still a little bit wet, which works out really great. And then I'm going to put that down so now I can smudge a little bit. This is too tacky. It's tacky. Some of the paint is coming up. So what do? You can continue, as long as the paint is wet. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to show you a tip that you can, I'm going to overlap some of the yellow here. I'm going to show you something that you can do when you need to do some smooth blending if your paint is dry. Now I have to wait for this to dry. I have to wait for that to dry. While this part's drying, I'm going to come back up here, rinse my brush, and I need to fix this up a bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of the white into the blue, overlap, and overlap. This is still wet. I'm going to let this dry. I'll show you what to do with that. And we're just going to smudge over some of the areas and take a little bit of the purple and come in here. You get some of those little clouds happening here. Okay. Whoops, wrong color. Wrong color. Take a little bit more blue, a little bit more Napthol red light. So the Alizarin crimson looks like we're not going to need it. Now this is wet paint on a dry surface. This is all dry here, and I can tell it's just smudging. And I'm also holding it up like this. When it's going to dry flat, which will make it easier to paint on, but I've got that glare. So when smudging, you're just dry brushing the paint into the canvas. You're just smudging. You're just doing a soft rub. I wiped out my brush, and see what's happening now? The paint is coming up. So this is why once the paint gets tacky, you got to stop. I'm just going to spread that out a bit. And I'm going to get my heat gun and I'm going to dry this just so I can show you what to do. When you're painting and you want to get a nice blend on a dry surface, first of all, we can do it with just a dry brush technique. That's not a problem. I'm going to make sure that everything is dry because I don't want to pull up the paint. Reach over, take some water and just do a light mist. You're just dampening the piece. And once it's damp, I actually like using extender for this. And then once it's damp, you can come in now and you can work your magic. See? It blends so much easier when it's wet. This is why if you've watched Bob Ross, bless him, I love him. If you've seen Bob Ross painting, he always starts off with either liquid white or liquid black. Bill Alexander, who I studied the technique from, and Bill Alexander actually taught Bob Ross. He uses something called magic white, and all it is the white oil paint that's thinned down, and it helps the paint flow. So see how easy that is now? But if you don't know your color mixing, you're not gonna understand why using an orange color over blue could be dangerous. It's gonna get muddy, which is not so much muddy but dull, which is fine for this because it is dull in the photograph. And this is way too dark. I'm gonna take some white. And I'm just going to knock that back a little bit. Okay. So you can just blend that over. It's starting to dry a bit. I'm going to put a little bit more water. And let's see, I've got a little bit of orange here. You see, it's all... Now from the photograph that when I originally downloaded it, the photograph, this is really bright white. I didn't really want it to be bright white. I wanted it to be more warm. So you can see I'm just blending, and it's just coming over so beautifully. Bit of water. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush. Go back into some yellow. And again, I have no idea what's happening in the actual photograph. There's a bunch of trees in there. I'm not going to worry about that part. Coming with the red. There's just some dark parts in here, so I can just overlay that a little bit. There's some clouds taking place, a little bit of red. And you can just make some little smudges here. And there is kind of a something. I don't know what's going on here. So I'm thinking, well, okay, what if I just add some purple in here? There's a big tree right here. I moved the yellow in the photograph is over here, but the sun, I believe, is somewhere in here. And I'm just going to take my brush now, blot it, rinse it. Brush is still too wet, blot it again. And just smudge it. And you're coming down into the yellow, it's going to smudge that even more. I can come up, put a little bit more in here. The purple actually comes down on an angle. So, and I'm moving around. You notice I'm moving around as areas are starting to dry. Because this now I don't want to go over it because I'll lift it up. So I'm going to let it dry. Come in here. And I think that's might be a little bit too red. I'm going to put a bit more blue in there. And that purple is too deep and too dark. So I'm going to put a little bit of white to see the underlying color. I am so tempted to go into the Alizarin Crimson. There we go. And now because it's too intense, I need to knock that back a bit. The best way to knock that back is I'm going to add a little bit of Diarylide yellow. So I'm going to remove the excess and just smudge. And this is dry. So the paint's not really flowing, but if I wanted to do this as a dry brush technique to keep the stuff soft, I can do that. And when you're working on a canvas, if you're doing a landscape, then obviously you'll go right to the edges. But I can just come in here. You got to keep everything soft, so I'm just scrubbing back and forth. Keep everything soft. I lost my picture again. Have to wait for the monitor to come back on. Come back on. There we go. And now I'm going to let that sit for a bit. I'm going to come over here. And here it's a bit more blue. So I'm going to just take a bit more blue in my dirty brush. I'm going to wet that. There we go. Because this is smoother. You can do this entire painting, to be honest with you, with a dry brush technique. A bristle brush is better for that, though. Now, I have no idea what's happening here because there's trees involved. want to come in here. So you see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of overlapping the colors. Now this is a purple going over the yellow, so it's going to muddy down. So this is why it's important that this part here be dry. There's a lot of clouds happening in here. There's also some white showing through. Well, if there's white showing through, we can very easily put that in there. I'm just going to smudge that around. Keep it soft. And this swoops right down. Like I said, I'm not copying the sky exactly. I want to really showcase those colors in there. And there's also some darks. I'm going to use the excess in the brush. This is tacky here, so I'm going to avoid that area. And dry brushing now. There's a little bit of purple up here. See, it's just, oh, you can really see the texture from underneath. That's kind of cool, actually. See the texture of the gesso. That's neat. Not part of the lesson, I'm sorry. And when you're painting this as well, avoid painting straight down. Go onto a canvas where you can actually put these pieces. As soon as I lift it up, I'm going, oh, I'm missing a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm missing a whole bunch of stuff. But as I'm making my marks with the dry brushing, here I'm going to really exaggerate this. Look at that. See all those lines? That's because of the gesso underneath. To me, I'm fine with that because this is just a, you know, to match the colors. When you're doing this, you want your canvas to be smoother. Okay, I have no idea what's happening in here, so let's put a little bit of that in there. And I need to bring a bit more blue over here. So, phthalo blue and some white. Now, that's a bit too intense. I want to put a little bit of yellow in that. And a little bit of Diarylide yellow to knock it down. There we go. That's a nice gray. That's a nice gray. I found that this is too blue. It does match the photograph, but I'm finding for what I'm doing, it's too intense. There we go. Remember, you're going over orange. It's gonna be dull right to start. I'm just covering up all that really heavy blue. Now I can come in with the purple if I have any left. Right in my dirty brush. And it's gonna, the paint is wet here, so that's gonna really work nicely. And there's more blue here. This is a little bit dark. Go right into the white. There we go. So again, there's a whole bunch of trees here. I have no idea what's going on. So now what I'm going to do, that's still tacky. I'm going to show you. I've got to reach over. A tiny little bristle brush. I also can use a little dome brush like this. This is a stencil brush. So I'm going to show you using both of these. I can take this white on the bristle brush, blot the excess, and just soften up the edges. And this is ideal for a dry brush. A dry brush, think of putting makeup on. You're just putting a layer, a very, very soft layer. Now, if you're a guy watching this, I have no idea. I have no idea. So just maybe wax on, wax off with the white. And I'm putting in little bits of white showing through. And you may see me doing this a lot with my finger. This is non-toxic paint. I can get away with doing that. When it comes to oils, you just have to be careful to make sure you remove the paint off your hands. And there's little bits. Now, composition-wise, there's white parts of the sky showing through. I wouldn't put the white so close to the edge because your attention just goes right to the edge of the painting, which is not what you want. But painting a sky with all primary colors when you've got your yellows, your reds, your oranges, and all that is very, very difficult. But if you just know what your colors can do for you, it'll be a little bit easier. I'm not happy with that. There's actually a purple under here. Not quite happy with this. What I'm not happy with is that this layer of titanium white is transparent. I'm not liking that. Not liking that. I'm also going to brighten this a little bit, so I'm going to add more white right here. And this is quite bright up here. Looking. And this is too bright for me. In the photograph, it is quite bright. So it's up to you how you want to work with that. So I'm going to put that brush down now, and I'm going to show you with the little dome brush. Let's dry brush some purple. So I'm not going to use the bristle brush to make the paint. I'm going to put, because the paint will just get stuck right in the bristles. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of Diarylide yellow in there to knock that back, and then let's bring some white in there. You won't need a lot. That's actually not too bad. I want to make it a bit more blue. There we go. So it's going to be the same thing. Make sure everything is dry. And I'm going to load the paint on the little stencil brush, blot it on a paper towel, come in here, and I'm just going to scumble. And this makes such a beautiful, soft, and it is transparent. Okay, it is transparent. Beautiful, soft look. When I'm teaching how to, how to paint horses, we do a lot of dry brushing. So, note to self, if I'm going to be painting a sky, ease up on the gesso. Look at all that texture. Ease up on all that texture because it does affect what the sky looks like. See? It does affect it. So, that's my note to self. You know what I forgot to do? I didn't blot the brush. There we go. And the reason why you have to make sure that this is all dry, because we're doing our scrubbing, you don't want to lift the paint up. And when you're doing your dry brushing like this, it's going to be you're going to take many, many layers to do this. This is quite dark here. Okay. And I can come in. And I have no idea, because there's a big tree here, I have no idea what's happening back here. But let me go into a little bit of red. I just said don't load your brush directly into the paint because it'll be too much, but let's see what happens. So Diarylide yellow, a little bit of Napthol red light, right into the dirty brush. And now we can see, this is the real kicker where it shows how you can really deepen it. So think of the dry brushing, it's transparent layers, so this is why it's important that you know your color theory, so you'll know what's happening. A bit of red up here. This gesso mark is making it very difficult for me to get the strokes that I want. And there's lots of, oh, there's more red, really red down here. This is still a little bit tacky. Some of the paint came up a bit. So make sure before you even try doing your dry brushing that everything is bone dry. And also feel free to adjust the size. Oh, you can really see the texture in there. See? All right, I'm going to put that aside. And I'm thinking now, whoops. Rinse that. And I'm thinking now one of the last things I want to do, I need to filter this out a little bit. Take a bit of the ultramarine blue. Should have been phthalo blue, sorry. And I don't like how bright that is, so I'm going to knock it back a bit. A little bit of Diarylide yellow. Oh, too much Diarylide yellow. Look what happens. It turns green. Yeah, do we want to use that? Not on your life. But we don't have to get rid of it. We just add much more blue and much more white. It's still too green. So let's add a bit of red. Boom. We have our gray back. Oh, Chaos is here. And you know what she's going to be asking for? I'm hungry. Just adding a little bit of that gray in here. Not too much. Remember, clouds are layers upon layers upon layers. She's going to jump on the table. She's going to jump. And I'm going to wipe that brush. I'm going to go into some white. And I'm taking the white and I'm really smushing it into the brush. It's canceling out all the dirty color in there. Blot that. And now I'm just going to come in and just adding the touches. This brush is a little bit big for this. It's a little bit big. So the filbert, I can just use the brush on its tips, which makes it a little bit easier. Just keep it light. And it's kind of like almost like a starburst here, but starburst, see, looking at it, I don't know what's behind those trees, so the starburst doesn't make sense considering the sun looks like it's in the lower right hand side. So I'm adjusting this so it makes sense because I'm not painting any trees. And I need to darken the top here a little bit because the way that this is in the painting, the bright is over, the white part's over here, but the yellow is way over here. Chaos is not a happy camper. Take that brush and go right into that purple again. Yeah, so that gesso on the bottom is making it quite difficult to get a even coverage in there. Making it very challenging. So we could take some more white paint and just kind of filter that. So I would just, so with all that texture in there, I would just keep working with the wet on wet technique. There's a lot of gesso there. Holy smokes. So do as I say, not as I do. When you're working with a smooth sky, ease up on the gesso underpainting. It's correctable, but I'd rather you spend your time on matching the colors versus trying to correct because you were too quick with the gesso. So I took it upon myself to adjust the blue on the side because I didn't like how bright it was. I grayed it down. And everything, the clouds are kind of swooping this way. So I'm just adjusting all this. Keep it dark on the edges. Whoops. So that here, if I made that mistake, I could just come back in with darker paint. No biggie. And now that that white's dried, I can come in here and I can add a few more little bits of the clouds. Okay. And I want to in here, that's way too purple. Take a little bit of orange in there. So I'm just going to blot the excess now, and I just want to, right up here, would be much easier dry brushing, but there's so much texture. There's so much texture in here that I'm going to see if I can do it wet on wet. Or wet on dry. So this is not a quick technique because you're using the primary color. If you're just making the sky like this with just, you know, the blues and that, it's so much easier. But because you're using the primary colors, it is much more difficult. So use this opportunity. Don't get frustrated by, oh, it's taking so long. Just layer and layer and layer. But knowing your colors is going to make a huge difference. So again, there's a massive tree there. I have no idea what's behind there. So I'm basically just fudging it, making it up as I go. So I'm thinking I'm going to extend this red a bit. Whoops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Too late. Didn't blot my brush. Okay. That's, you know what, that's a bit bright. So I'm going to take a little bit of white in there. The white will soften it because there's white in the background. See how it just softens that? And that's right in there. That is right in there. There we go. I'm not a fan of all that white in the photograph, so I'm just going to play with this a little bit. I like it more of kind of like a smooth transition with lots of clouds and stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the white on the dirty, I put white in a dirty brush, get that in there. Now I can come in with a bit of the red, and now the red just kind of blends so much nicer. And you're just scumbling to get those where everything is just kind of layers. And I'm looking at this now. Do I have any more purple left in here? Just gonna put a little bit of purple in there. Wet on wet is so much easier. You do want to keep some activity in there. gonna come in here, there's a dark part here, then the tree, I have no idea what's going on there. So we're gonna pretend. Pretending is fun. Creating a landscape or even a sky out of your, from memory is not super easy, because then you, well, no, it's not that it's hard. You're just, I prefer working from some type of reference material, because I'm adjusting. I'm compensating because of the gesso. See how that's really blending in there? And then I can come in if I want to take some more white, and I can come in here and punch that up just a little bit where the white is. In the photograph, it's super soft, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Come back in there, just hits of that. And then it's up to you how you want to interpret what's behind the tree. I'm not going to be putting a tree in there. But that's why when you're working wet on wet is so much easier. Here we go. And I'm looking to where that tree is. There is some yellow in here. I don't know what's behind there, so it's a bit deceiving. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is, just to finish off this piece. Yeah, not Alizarin crimson. Holy smokes, that's like super wicked strong. No. But what if we just neutralize it a little bit? Okay, so that's really violet. If we put a little bit of yellow in there. Oh man, that really killed it. Nah, I was hoping I could just go without adding more paint. Paint to it. Again, just experiment and play. That's going to be the best thing to do. I'm going to take a bit more Diarylide yellow. I want to make this a little bit more orange. And if you want to use your orange, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to wet that a little bit. There we go. So that went over the purple and it kind of made mud. Over the yellow, you're going to be okay. So I'm putting a glazer, because I wet the brush, it's glazing, so I'm just adding a layer of vibrancy. A little bit of color in there. But going over the purple, you'll see how muddy it's looking? Because it's transparent. What happens when you have orange going over purple? You get mud, but it's actually really pretty. Oh, I lost, come on. There we go. I lost my thing there. I'll come in a bit here. Oh, too dry. Make sure if you're going to spray, make sure that it's completely dry and not tacky. If it's tacky, it's going to come up. Yeah, I'm not liking how that's working. There we go. There's a little bit of red up here, and there's a little bit of orange up here. And these are all the little peekaboos behind the clouds. And this brush, I'm thinking, yeah, it's a little bit big. It's always best to work with a bigger brush if you can. So everything is kind of going like this. I'm not liking how that's working. So what do? Well, what do we got? Let's just take a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of the red, and a little bit of the white. Blot the brush. So all I'm doing is basically doing my scumbling with my synthetic. Because not everybody has the bristle brushes. With acrylics, they're not super friendly. And I need to go deeper in the purple in the top. right up here. I'm going to keep that edge nice and soft. So all I'm doing is now adding the really, really dark purples. And I think I'm going to leave it now. I'm actually happy the way this turned out. A lot of detail in this. So I would suggest you make sure that you go through the other lessons as well for the sky painting, and practice your strokes with that before attempting something this strong. Just hitting that. I just picked up a little bit of Napthol red in there. And knock that back a bit. There we go. There's so much texture. There's so much texture going on there. And I think I'm going to leave this now. I'm going to leave it now, and then you basically can go on for as much as you want. So just showing you how to match up the colors. And I said I wasn't going to do an actual landscape piece, which I did. And if you want to put the trees in there, just use the same colors. So you make yourself a chromatic black, or use maybe like maybe a deep blue or something like that, and you can just pop that in there. Now, if you don't want to make a painting with any blue, it would be so much easier for you. Didn't have any blue, then just use your reds. Just use your reds, and then you can basically, you won't have to worry so much about the mixing of the color. Just going to fix this part up here. So I'm just layering and layering and layering, but I'm loving the look with the wet on wet technique. And I'm just going to extend this. I know I said I was going to stop, but I'm just extending this to change this because I'm loving this color. And that's one of the things when you're working in an art journal, you can experiment. If you're working on a canvas, you may be thinking, oh, you know, I don't want to do this because I might ruin it or whatever. That's why working in a, oh, my paint's dry. Working in an art journal, just have fun. Just have fun. It is so much better because what's the worst that can happen? You just cover it up and do something else. I love that purple. Watch what I'm going to do. Watch what I'm going to do. Think of this as a bonus. I'm going to extend that purple right over. I love this purple. There's a beauty working with acrylics. See, it completely changes the whole makeup of the piece. Completely changed it. I love that purple, that deep, deep, deep purple. Now, unless you were doing a class where you're being graded on making a mirror copy, that's one thing, but this is not the purpose of this class. I really want to make that more blue. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. Oh, God, I love that. God, I love that. Love that, love that. And now I can just overlay. And I can pick up more white for other types of cloud formations if I wanted to. Remember, when you're doing the sunset, everything is just overlaid. The clouds are all seeping in behind each other. Lots of stuff happening. And everything is kind of going this way. I'm going a little bit straight. It should be coming like this. But loving the purple. Loving the purple. So it's actually kind of almost like a starburst. It's coming out like that. Brighten that up with the white. I'm blotting my brush just to show you. Clean your paper towels. Get a fresh one because I just blotted my brush onto a part that was dirty. There we go. Just fixing that. See? And now I can come in and just overlay some dark clouds. Keep the bottom edges soft. Just overlay. And the position of the clouds, where they're going to be dark and where they're going to be light, will be dependent on where the sun is. In the photograph, it's hard to tell. I'm thinking, if I'm looking at, like, to gridding it, I'm thinking that the sun is here, brightest yellow, but I'm also seeing yellow here. Did I just do that? Oh my goodness. And right in the dirty brush, and I can just come in and just build up some more lights. I'm loving this wet on wet. I have to be completely honest with you. I'm loving the wet on wet. Before I developed the allergies and the cat, you know, everything I was doing was oils. And then Chaos was having issues with the paints, so we had to stop, or I had to stop, and I can only do oil painting now when I can open up the windows. There's a big pocket here. Okay. And you can deepen this up as much as you want. I'm just showing you that you can just shift the entire painting. And because we're working just with the same palette, because we're working with the same palette of colors, it doesn't matter what you do. It's going to work. Looks like a mountain. Look at that. So, okay, let's... Well, no, because now I'm getting sidetracked. Let me show you how to do a mountain. Here you go. That's how you do a mountain. But it's supposed to be a cloud. Let's soften that up a bit. Let's work the edges. Going right over the orange, and because the blue is stronger than the orange, that's why it's working. Oh, I have to make sure I turn that sleep feature off. I'm just going to deepen that because I like my corners dark in my paintings. And this is now getting, this is very dry. It's very dry. The paint stuck and it didn't blend. So I'm going to wet. So all I do is just take white and wet it. Rinse the brush. And now I'm going to reload and go right over. Now it makes more sense. And whether or not, you know, if you're not a fan of wet on dry, then do the whole thing wet on wet. There's absolutely no reason why you have to do it the same way that I am. I'm just adding a bit more yellow in here. You can do it any way you want. You can even knock down that yellow. I'm just streaking over a little bit of the Napthol red light. Right over that. To neutralize. Softening that up. And if you wanted to then take the sky and just make it really dark, just go with that same purple and just really overlay a lot of that in there. And again, some clouds, keep them nice and soft. Depending on where the light is from the sun, that will dictate where the highlights are in the cloud. That's why using a photograph is always a nice way to go when you're painting. So that's it. Now I really am going to stop. Every time I'm thinking, oh, why don't I just show you this? Or why don't I show you that? Yeah, that texture really caused me some grief. That texture really caused me some grief. That's a bit tacky. Let's see what happens. So practice up, and again, don't feel frustrated when you're working on this because of the colors. This is a very challenging, very challenging piece to do because it's of the primary colors. So it's absolutely critical that you know what the colors can do for you. If you don't know what the colors can do for you, you're just going to get stuck, and you're going to put blue over the yellow, and you're going to go, why is this doing this? So you need to know. You need to know why. Alrighty, so that's it. So clean your brushes, and so practice up your colors, write down your swatch names, and just practice the technique of blending and then overlaying your colors. Alright, so hope you enjoyed this, and let this dry for a good 24 hours before you close your journal. And until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.